Hey everyone, my name is Aaron from Aaron Reviews Media, and The Mandalorian and Grogu has just dropped in theaters this weekend. With the release of this Star Wars movie, lots of people are ranking their favorite Star Wars movies, but I thought it would be interesting to rank all 16 notable Mandalorians from Star Wars canon. At number 16, I have Tar Vizsla. Now, you may be wondering who is Tar Vizsla. Tar Vizsla was the first Mandalorian Jedi and is responsible for the creation of the Darksaber. He's often forgotten because he only appears in about 30 seconds of Star Wars Rebels. In this clip, Fenrau explains to the Ghost crew who Tar Vizsla is and shows him as a shadowy figure in a puppet show type demonstration. Now, Tar Vizsla has a lot of interesting lore around him, but he really needs to be developed further in canon to earn a spot higher on this list. For this reason, I have Tar Vizsla at 16 on my list. At number 15, I have Casca Reeves. Casca Reeves is a character who just kind of follows Bo-Katan around throughout The Mandalorian Season 2 and 3. Her and the next character on this list, I kind of debated going back and forth between putting them in each other's spots. She can easily move up a spot and the other character can move down a spot on any given day. But for today, she's coming in at 15. She does have a notable fight with Boba Fett, which I feel is the most developed part of her character. She really just serves to further the Mandalorian mythos of, there's this sect of Mandalorians that can take off their helmet, which provides a contrast to Mando's, and she pushes back at Mando for that ideology. She does have some cool action sequences. She joins the fight to seize Moff Gideon's cruiser in Season 2, and she also joins the fight to reclaim Mandalore in Season 3, but she simply is just a henchman to Bo-Katan, and she isn't that developed, which is why she lands in spot 15 on this list. At 14, I have Axe Wolves, and he is just a little more developed than Casca Reeves, and the reason is he actually splits off from Bo-Katan's clan at the end of Season 2, and he kind of holds his own fort of renegade Mandalorians, kind of bounty hunters, that Mando and Bo-Katan have to reunite with in Season 3. Because of this, he has a little more time to shine as his own character than Casca Reeves does. Yes, he follows Bo-Katan around for much of the show, but he has this rigid ideology of this is the Darksaber, this is how it's supposed to work, this is the old Mandalorian ways that he's really going to stick to, and he eventually ends up changing on that because of the technicality of Bo-Katan beating a creature that captured Mando so that she can have the Darksaber. But he still does not like the idea of Mando having the Darksaber, and that is consistent with his characterization through the whole show, because he is this character who is once again arguing with Mando because he believes that Mando's sect of Mandalorians is a cult, and he needs to have someone who is not of the cult of Mando's sect wield the Darksaber. And because he just gets a little more development than Casca Reeves, he's going to place above her at 14 on this list. At number 13, I have Rook Kast, and before I delve into her character, I just want to warn you that there'll be spoilers for Maul Shadowlord in this section of the video. You can go ahead and skip ahead to the next chapter marker if you want to avoid the spoilers. So Rook Kast, originally I probably would have placed her a lot lower on this list because originally she is just kind of this goon for Maul in the Siege of Mandalore, and she makes sure that Maul is the one on top. She's not even Maul's chief enforcer. That goes to Gar Saxon. She's just kind of the second fiddle to Gar. and she doesn't do a whole lot. So she would have been a lot lower on this list if Maul Shadow Lord had not released. Now, in Maul Shadow Lord, she gets a lot more time to shine on the screen. You really get to know her as a character, and she starts to make some of her own decisions and not just play advisor to Maul. There's this mercenary clan of Mandalorians that Maul is hiring, and you get some conflict between the mercenary clan and Rook Kast, as Rook Kast is strictly loyal to Maul, and this mercenary clan is not. They're willing to leave him while Rook isn't. That's an interesting bit of character for her there. She also serves to just make Vader look more powerful, where Vader just kills her instantly and she's one of the pawns to eventually fall to him. And that's always cool to see Vader murder someone, even if that's not a direct representation of Rook's character. But she still is a goon to Maul. She doesn't really have a whole lot of character development, so that ends up placing her at number 13 on this list. At number 12, I have the first Mandalorian on this list who has not been seen wearing any Mandalorian armor. He's not a fighter. He's one of Mandalore's politicians. From this point on, I just want to say that I think all of the Mandalorians on this list are well-written characters. This would be really the threshold at number 12 that I think is a well-written and developed character, whereas the characters lower on this list I think need more time to develop. So at number 12, I have Prime Minister Almec, and he is this interesting character because he's a corrupted politician. He's definitely not a good leader for Mandalore, but he is trying to do what is best for his people. He believes that when we first meet him, that adding commerce to Mandalore will help prosper its economy by allowing trade from these smugglers that are selling contraband on Mandalore. And he's not wrong that Mandalore has gone into such a peaceful way that it's hurting the planet. They've lost their background, they've lost their ability to trade in the galaxy because they're on this neutral stance in the Clone Wars. They really need to side with one side of the Clone Wars or the other in order to prosper and have a flourishing economy, which is what Almec is seeing. The problem is that this goods that he allows onto the planet is poisoning children, which makes him this really evil character that he's choosing the economy of his planet over the lives of his children, which in his mind is the right choice. And then later on, in season 7, he's broken out of this prison by Gar Saxon, and he's installed as the puppet leader of Mandalore under Maul, and you can really see his incompetence there. He's not doing anything significant. He's just following the orders of what Maul wants him to do in order to govern Mandalore for him. So ultimately, Almec is a really flawed character, and he does not have anything that makes the audience want to root for him, which is why I'm putting him this low at the list at 11. But I do think he is a well-written character in that he has evil parts of him. He's doing a lot of bad things on Mandalore, but he believes that that is the right thing. All of his actions he believes are bettering Mandalore for his people, which makes him interesting to me. So he comes in at number 12 on this list. At number 11 on this list, I have Gar Saxon, and he is the second to last character on this list that is purely a villain. He gets a lot more character development in addition to his Clone Wars screen time in Star Wars Rebels, and I really like what they ended up doing with the character in the Star Wars canon. So he starts off in Star Wars The Clone Wars as Maul's right-hand enforcer. He's not really much more than a goon. He has a little bit of development. He's the guy to break Almec out of prison. He's the guy who is leading the frontline forces for Maul on the Siege of Mandalore against the clones and against the Republic, but eventually he is captured by the Republic and he feels like Maul has left him behind. He hates the Republic, so he agrees with the Empire's message that the Jedi are traitors, so he joins the Empire. and he serves as their like chief Mandalorian enforcer, as he's got this army of Mandalorians that are loyal to the Empire, and he uses this army to totally wipe out Fen Rao's camp in Star Wars Rebels, and he's just going to be that antagonistic force towards Sabine and Fen Rao as they try to reclaim Mandalore from the Empire. So he is an interesting character to me, but he doesn't have that redemption or that morally gray stance where he helps both sides that the rest of the characters on this list will have. And he still ultimately is just a goon, whether that's to Maul or to the Empire. So he comes in at number 11 on this list. Number 10, I have Paz Vizsla, and this is one of my favorite characters introduced by the Mandalorian. There are two more on this list in the Mandalorian show that I actually liked more, but Paz Vizsla is really great. He has this ideology with Mando that Mando believes that he is the right person to have the Darksaber, but he also doesn't want to be burdened by the Darksaber. He wants to give it away to Bo-Katan, or he does not want Moff Gideon to have it, but because he won it from combat in Moff Gideon, he's the person who has to bear this Darksaber. But Vizsla is then seen in the Book of Boba Fett where he challenges Mando for the Darksaber and he can't win, showing that he is not the character that is destined to rule Mandalore. He doesn't have that bravado to him that he needs to lead his people, and that's really changes him as a character, because originally he's only in one episode of The Mandalorian season 1 where they free Mando and Grogu from the Empire on Navarro, and his appearance is the Book of Boba Fett, so he doesn't have a whole lot in seasons 1 and 2, but you can see that he's like a jaded character. He doesn't trust Mando. When Mando comes back in season 3, he's like, you broke our creed, now you have to be exiled. Like, he is diehard to the way that the Mandalorians on Navarro were following. But Mando's duel with him in the Book of Boba Fett kind of changes him as a character, where he then goes to help out Mando, and then he's one of the first people to volunteer to go reclaim Mandalore for the Mandalorians in the reclamation of Mandalore, and then ultimately he has this really, really great sacrifice death at the end of Mandalorian season 3, and it's gut-wrenching. Like, you really feel it. So that Paz Vizsla is at number 10 on my list. At number 9, I have Satine Kryze, who is the Duchess of Mandalore during most of the Clone Wars. And she's this really interesting character because she has this ideology that really conflicts with the rest of the Mandalorians. So the Mandalorians, of course, were this warlike people, and Satine is bringing them into a time of peace and prosperity. So in that regard, she's done really well as the Mandalorian leader, but she's also abandoned their culture of war and violence and hunting down Jedi that really drives her people away from her. So she has this dual side as a leader, where parts of what she's done has been really well, and parts of what she has done has caused conflict. She's ultimately responsible for the Mandalorian Civil War because she refuses to address the looming threat of Death Watch, and when Death Watch comes and takes over the planet, she isn't able to do anything. So ultimately, she is out because of that. And she has this really interesting relationship with Obi-Wan that kind of counters Padme and Anakin, because her and Obi-Wan were obviously together before the events of the Clone Wars, and Obi-Wan has to leave her to be a Jedi, and he goes ahead and makes that choice, whereas Anakin does not make the choice to leave Padme. And Obi-Wan says, if you had said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order. But she did not drive him to leave the Jedi Order, just like Padme did not drive Anakin to leave the Jedi Order, but Anakin and Padme stayed together, ultimately leading Anakin to the dark side. So that's a really interesting there between the two characters of Obi-Wan and Satine and Anakin and Padme. So that is really interesting to me, but it needs to be explored more. We don't ever get anything on screen of the pre-Clone Wars Obi-Wan and Satine. It would be really nice to see them in like a Tales of the Jedi type series where you get to explore Obi-Wan's relationship with Satine. How did they meet? What went down that they were on the run together? And I believe this is explored in some graphic novels, but again, I'm focusing only on the shows and movies in this list. Because of Satine's character and the interesting kind of pacifist outlook that she takes, and her relationship dynamic with Obi-Wan, which really brought some interesting points to the Clone Wars. It really improved on Obi-Wan's character too. She goes at number 9 in this list. At number 8, I have Fenrau, and he's kind of hard to place on this list because he is originally antagonistic to the characters in the Ghost Crew. He's kind of leading this Mandalorian outpost for the Empire. They're mercenaries, they're working for the Empire, and the Ghost Crew has to capture him to allow for passage through the area that his crew is guarding because they needed that passage to support their rebel efforts. But Fenrau is the first character in this list to kind of not be one side or the other concretely. Like Satine is always good, for example. She always is portrayed as a protagonist, and then the characters behind her are, with the exception of Terra Vizsla, because he's not really portrayed at all, are always portrayed as antagonists. And Fenrau has this dynamic where he's captured and he's like, all right, you guys captured me, I'm never going to work for you, like this is not going to work. But he's brought back and he sees that his people are decimated by Gar Saxon and the Empire, and then he has this change of heart, like, all right, well, I've seen what the Empire is capable of, now I'm going to fight with you guys, and I'm going to lead Sabine to eventually reunite the clans of Mandalore and understand the use of the Darksaber. And also he's critical in the Darksaber arc of Rebels because he's really the person who's kind of guiding Sabine on, hey, this is how you use the Darksaber, this is how you're going to unite our people. So he has a lot of interesting parts to him, but ultimately he's not in that many pieces of Star Wars media, and he doesn't have a lot of like action that makes him stand out compared to the others. So that's why he lands right at the middle of this list on number 8. At number 7, I have the Armorer, and the best way that I can describe this character is that she is the judge or arbiter of the Mandalorian clan that we see in the Mandalorian TV show. She is this character who knows the way, she knows all the rules, but she is the person who decides when that way changes, and she is able to allow Mando to reclaim his honor by telling him about these loopholes, per se, that allow him to go bathe in the water of Mandalore to get his honor back after losing his helmet. She is contrary to Paz Vizsla, where Paz Vizsla is so strict. She's kind of this character who is just able to adapt and understand that, yeah, that Mando, things happen, they don't always go right. This is how you can get back in our clan. This is how you can reclaim your honor. She also just is really cool in that she has these skills where she forges all these weapons and armor out of Beskar, and that is a really interesting thing to see, that she's this only skilled craftsman, the only one capable of forging Mando's armor. So we see him keep getting upgrades throughout the series. He comes back to the armor to get these upgrades, and it's always these small conversations that they have while he's getting the upgrades that really add to the depth of the Mandalorian show and are some of my favorite parts. I really liked how she sent him out to go get the crest by slaying the Mudhorn. She sent him out to recover his honor by going to the living waters of Mandalore, and she gave Mando the whistling birds and weapons and upgrades that you see from that. Overall, I think the Armor is a great character, and even though she's not always in the action, when she does, she has this brass gavel that is symbolic of her being this judge or arbiter character, and she pulls the moves with the brass gavel. It is really cool how she fights, where she's just bonking stormtroopers with her gavel, and she doesn't use a blaster. She has this really unique fighting style of using that brass gavel. So because of her flexibility as a character and the way that she fits into the overall Mandalorian story, she comes in at number 7 on this list. At number 6, I have Pre Vizsla, and this guy is the leader of Death Watch. He's been one of the main antagonists in the Clone Wars for seasons 3 and 4, and I think 5, if I'm remembering correctly. And he really is the person who orchestrates the Mandalorian Civil War. I mean, he's got the backing of Count Dooku to really sow unrest in the system, and he does a great job of being that really despicable person that you don't like and you don't want to win. He ultimately takes over Satine's throne, kicks her in prison, and he has the Darksaber, so he is the legal ruler of all of Mandalore, and he is able to claim that title while still being a scummy person because of the symbolism that the Darksaber has, which is really compelling to me, that he's this character who no one wants to win, but he's the one that people are obligated to fight for. And obviously, eventually, Darth Maul comes along and tries to claim the Darksaber, so he fights him to the death, and Maul wins because Maul's just a way better warrior than Pre Vizsla. But Pre Vizsla puts up a fight, and the fight that they have is really cool. So for those reasons, I'm going to put Pre Vizsla at number 6 on my list. Before I get into my top 5, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed this style of video. Let me know if I should keep producing rankings like this, and let me know if you like this video at all down in the comments below. The top 5 that I have are pretty obvious. You'll know them if you've been paying attention to this video and noticed, oh, where has this character been? Where has this character been? It's probably my top 5. They're very well developed. They're probably the characters that have the most screen time. The question is, what order am I going to put them in? So at number 5, I have Sabine Wren. And Sabine is a character that sometimes I really like, and sometimes I don't really like what they do with her character. She has this interesting way of fighting where she uses these spray paints and bombs to kind of combine with the Mandalorian style of blaster fighting, and she's in exile from her people. She's not with any clan, but she's ultimately the person who unites the whole clans of Mandalore in the final season of Rebels. And that's really interesting, that she is this character who is really so embedded in the Mandalorian mythos and the Darksaber, but she's not a part of a particular Mandalorian clan that has a lot of active members on this list that have been developed a lot. She also, of course, has the whole Rebel storyline to develop, so we spent a lot of time with her. She has this on-off relationship with Ezra that it's like, Ezra is obviously someone who would put his life on the line for Sabine. He fancies her, and it's really these characters that grow and develop together. So they have a lot of great moments together as a character. Ultimately, what brings Sabine down on this list is that the episodes in Rebels are not of a consistent quality. Like, sometimes they do a lot of great stuff with her in Rebels, and other times it's just that she is, or the whole crew is not moving forward with the plot or moving forward with the whole theme of the show, that there are a lot of episodes in Rebels that just drag and drag, so that people don't really want to watch her as a character grow. And that's not really a fault of her own, that's a fault of the Rebels show as a whole, in that there's a lot of filler going on there.
Also, I wasn't a fan of her whole deal in Ahsoka where she gets stabbed with a lightsaber and survives. Like, she's not that tough of a person. She's not a Jedi. She's training to be a Jedi, but she isn't one yet. So, she's Ahsoka in the to be a Jedi, and I still wasn't a fan of her character because she was just so whiny in the show. Like, she kept complaining about being a Jedi, like, this is not what I want to do, so why do you take her character in that direction? In my opinion, we already have Grogu, who's going to be a Mandalorian Jedi, and we also have Ezra, who's the Jedi from Rebels that has trained under Canon, as these characters who have been Jedi. So why are we forcing Sabine to train also? She could be this unique fighter where she uses blasters instead of a lightsaber and attunes herself with the Force to use her blasters better, for example. Like, we don't have to go through the whole arc of making her a Jedi. So it'd be interesting to see if what they do in Ahsoka Season 2 changes my thoughts on this matter. I wasn't a fan of what they did with her in Ahsoka. Sabine lands at number 5, but she still really is a great character. She did make the top 5 on this list, just the other 4 are even better. At number 4, I have Bo-Katan Kryze, and she is a character who has been in the Clone Wars, been in Star Wars Rebels, been in The Mandalorian, and been in the Book of Boba Fett. Really, all of this is just, she's got so much development behind her, and she's this really interesting character. So she starts off her arc, like, she starts off being this person who is the foil to Satine, where Satine and Bo-Katan are sisters, but Satine is the pacifist and Bo-Katan is, let's hold on to our ways, let's be aggressive, let's keep our planet. But ultimately, when Bo-Katan stays with the Death Watch and the takeover of Mandalore by Pre Vizsla, she realizes that this is not the outcome that I wanted. I wanted a peaceful Mandalore, not something that is corrupt and overtaken by a puppet government. And then the same deal when Maul comes around, she goes and calls to the Republic for help because she knows that that's what she wants, Mandalore, not one that is taken over by Darth Maul. So her arc of going, all right, well, I'm going to be this violent revolutionary to, okay, well, I messed up, now I need to come back and fix my mistakes, is really interesting. And that's just her arc in the Clone Wars. And then, of course, in Rebels, you get the mythos of the Darksaber, where Bo-Katan is the one who wants the Darksaber. She wants the responsibility of leading, but Sabine is ultimately the one to use the Darksaber to unite the clans, because Sabine is running away from this responsibility, and it really showcases the theme that, like, the person who is best suited to lead is the person who least wants it. And that's true in a lot of real life and a lot of other shows, and in this show too. And it's a really valid theme that Dave Filoni and the other writers of Star Wars have hammered in on. And then you get The Mandalorian, where eventually Sabine loses her to Moff Gideon and the Darksaber. So now it's Bo-Katan's mission to get it back, and Moff Gideon is the person who wiped out Mandalore by the Empire. He's the one who made it this desolate planet, so now he has the Darksaber, and there's a lot of things that the Mandalorians want back from Moff Gideon, including the Darksaber. So that pulls Bo-Katan in and her crew in, and that is, but ultimately she has to get it from Mando by a technicality. She's not the one to earn it, and that kind of hurts her pride and hurts her reputation. So she is the one that needs to make up for that by recovering and reclaiming Mandalore for her people. She's also the person who kind of unites some of the clans. That Mando is in, doesn't let you take your helmet off, and then Bo-Katan's group of people, she brings them together and gets ready for the reclamation of Mandalore. I thought that was really cool. And she's definitely coming back in the future, so I'm really excited to see what they do with her, and that's why she lands at number 4 on this list. At number 3, I have Jango Fett. Jango Fett, of course, is the original Mandalorian, the first one that we've seen in canon. He is a really great bounty hunter, does a lot, and he ultimately meets his end to Mace Windu, which is what inspires his son Boba Fett to take up bounty hunting. And Jango Fett being so powerful and such a good fighter that he was the basis for the entire army of the Republic. All the clones are based off his DNA. I think that's really cool. He's obviously got a lot going for him, but what holds him back is he has very minimal screen time in the series. You only see him in Attack of the Clones, and he is ultimately killed off. So there's not really much that they can do with Jango Fett's character, but he definitely was someone who was really interesting to follow, and he was scheming with the Kaminoans to make the clones, but he also didn't really know what was going on. Like, he was not privy to the schemes of Dooku and Sidious that the clones were going to turn on the Republic. He was just a guy doing a job. And he's also got a really cool ship that he pilots in the scene where he chases Obi-Wan down an asteroid field, and that's a lot of fun. And of course that ship eventually passes to Boba Fett, and it's an iconic ship, so I gotta give him props for that. That's why Jango lands at number 3 on this list. At number 2, I have Boba Fett. Now, there's a lot of debate whether Boba Fett is actually a Mandalorian or not. We're going to consider him a Mandalorian for this because he is a clone of Jango Fett, and Jango Fett was a Mandalorian, so essentially he is a Mandalorian for the purposes of this list. He's appeared in the Mandalorian TV show, and he's got a lot of ties to that, and he's just really, really cool. So he starts off, the first time we see him is in The Empire Strikes Back. Of course, he's working for Darth Vader. He takes Han Solo and puts him in carbonite, and then he's on Jabba's barge later in episode 6, and then we think he meets his doom by the Sarlacc, but he manages to crawl out and get back alive. So he has to recover his armor in The Mandalorian, and once he does, he just goes back into full swing, and you get the Boba Fett you know and love, where he fights alongside Mando, and he's got a lot of cool gadgets up his sleeve. He's got the jetpack launcher that comes off the missile that comes off his jetpack, and it's just super cool to see again. What brings him down is I definitely wasn't a fan of the direction that they took him in the Book of Boba Fett, where he kind of becomes this passive, like, oh, I've just killed Jabba, I've taken over his palace, but now I'm gonna sit back and relax and just collect taxes. He doesn't do a whole lot. He's like, all right, well, maybe we can avoid these crime lords by reasoning with them, and they just kind of make him really soft in the Book of Boba Fett. There are also a lot of other bizarre decisions in the Book of Boba Fett that I didn't really agree with, and that was like basically of him just like hanging out with the Tusken Raiders and developing a community with them and riding a bantha. Like, that was a little bit confusing to me and didn't really make sense to me to have that as the direction that they took his character. And also, this is all not even mentioning the Clone Wars Boba. I like teenage Boba. I think he was good, and that we got to see him more in his early bounty hunting career working with these high-level bounty hunters was really, really nice. But ultimately, I think he just got overshadowed by the other bounty hunters that he worked with. Whenever he was with Cad Bane, you're like, oh, Cad Bane's the cool one. Or whenever he was with Bossk, you're like, oh, that's Bossk. Or oh, that's Embo. Like, all these other bounty hunters that were more in their prime when Boba was a kid kind of take away the spotlight from him. And he really does make a lot of stupid and annoying decisions when trying to hunt down Mace Windu. Like, he just, with the explosion, gets stranded on that one planet in season 2, I think, of the Clone Wars. It's been a while since I watched that episode. And because of his hatred for makes really poor decisions in the Clone Wars, which also brings him down a little bit, just because of the way that his character was handled as a teenager. But again, I don't hate teenage Boba as much as everyone else. I think it's fine enough. So for those reasons, he comes in at number 2. For number 1, you've all guessed it, you all know it. It's Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself. He has gotten a whole show to develop, and he's just this great character. He has a relationship with Grogu that brings him to more of the light side. He's not willing to work for the Empire anymore because he has to protect his son. And he's just a father trying to do what's best for this child that he has adopted. And that's just a really compelling arc. He also has some stuff going on with the Darksaber, and honestly, it's okay. I think that the other characters associated with the Darksaber, like Sabine and Bo-Katan, are more compelling on that side than him, because he's really not the person who wants the Darksaber. He just wants to get rid of it, but he has to navigate all these to finally dispose of the Darksaber or pass it on to someone else. He also has an interesting character arc where he starts like working for the Empire, and he discovers Baby Yoda, and he's like, oh no, I can't work for these people that are trying to get my kid and take his blood so they can clone Palpatine. And then he really starts fighting back, and once he starts fighting back, it kicks into high gear. He's a really capable warrior. In the Mandalorian and Grogu movie itself, he didn't really have any character development, which is one of my main issues with the film, but he does have some really cool action scenes that just make him a cooler character. He fights off this dragon snake, he kills a bunch of stormtroopers on the snow planet, and he's got this really cool action scene inside of a palace that he's just fighting off guards or his target, and it just brings you back to like, this guy is a bounty hunter. Like, yeah, he's got good morals, but he's got training as a bounty hunter, and that's what makes him so compelling. He's like a good guy bounty hunter, which is not something that you see a lot in Star Wars, because they're just trying to make money, and you don't make money by working for the good guys. So overall, that is why Din Djarin lands at number 1 on my list. If you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. You can watch this video on my left to see my full thoughts on the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, as well as this video below it, which is another video that YouTube thinks that you will like. Remember, keep watching media so I can keep covering.